Let's start the third chapter of history of your book Ruling the Countryside. Dear students, in this chapter we'll study about the economic and commercial policy of the British. First of all, we'll talk about the phases of economic policy. We can divide the phases of economic policy of the British into four parts. The first part is known as early phase, right? The first part is early phase. Early phase is considered from 1600 to 1757. 1600 to 1757 AD. Second part, mercantile period, right? In this chapter little bit we will talk about mercantile period 1757 to 1830, right? Third part is the third part is known as industrial phase. Industrial phase is 1813 to 1858, right? And fourth part is financial imperialism, 1858 onwards. So in this way, the phases of economic policy of the British can be divided into these four parts. Let's start the chapter with this image. See this image, figure 1. Robert Clive accepting the Diwani of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha from the Mughal ruler in 1765. Mughal ruler Shah Alam II. At that time, Shah Alam II was the Mughal ruler. After the Battle of Buxar in 1764, according to the Treaty of Allahabad, 1765, the British got the Diwani rights, right? Diwani rights or the civil rights. Diwani rights means to right to collect a revenue. Right to collect a revenue. We can say that economic power they got in Bihar, Bengal and Odisha. So let's have a look. On 12 August 1765, the Mughal Emperor appointed the East India Company as the Diwan of Bengal, along with Bengal, Bihar and Odisha also. The actual event most probably took place in Robert Clive's tent with a few Englishmen and Indians as witnesses. But in this painting above the event is shown as majestic occasion. Taking place in a grand setting, the painter was commissioned by Clive to record the memorable events in Clive's life. The grant of Diwani clearly was one such event in British imagination. So as Diwan, the company became the chief financial administrator. Means, as I told you earlier, that the British got the right to collect revenues, right? Right to collect revenues in Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. Means they have the control. Now they have the control over the territory under its control. Now it had to think of administering the land and organizing its revenue resources. Over the years, the company also learned that it had to move with some caution. Being an allied power, it needed to pacify those who in the past had ruled the countryside and enjoyed authority and prestige. Those who had held local power had to be controlled, but they could not be entirely eliminated. How was this to be done? In this chapter, we'll see how the company came to colonize the countryside, organize revenue resources, and redefine the rights of people and produce the crops it wanted. Means commercial crops they wanted, because due to the industrialization in Britain after the mid 18th century, they needed raw materials, raw crops for their textile industries in Britain. So first we'll study about revenue for company. The company had become the Diwan, but it still saw itself primarily as trader. It wanted a large revenue income but was unwilling to set up any regular system of assessment and collection. The effort was to increase the revenue as much as it could and buy fine cotton and silk cloth. Fine cotton and silk cloth, due to, as I told you, that textile industries were set up in Britain, so they needed raw material, raw cotton for the industries, silk industries, raw silk, etc. So cheaply, they wanted to purchase them cheaply. Within 5 years, the value of good bought by the company in Bengal doubled. Before 1865, it is 1765. Before 1765, the company had purchased goods in India by importing gold and silver. You have to remember, before 1765, they used to import gold and silver from Britain to India, right? Britain to India. But now they got Diwani rights to collect revenue, right to collect revenue in India. So they got money here in India, and now they could purchase the things, these kinds of raw materials with the help of that money, right? So now the revenue collected in Bengal could finance the purchase of goods for export. So they did not have need to carry silver and gold from Britain to purchase these things. Soon it was clear that the Bengal economy was facing a deep crisis due to the famines, and peasants were unable to pay the dues that were being demanded from them. Artisanal production was in decline and agricultural cultivation showed signs of collapse. Then in 1770, a terrible famine killed a million people in Bengal. So about one third of the population was wiped out. It was very horrible, or we can say that terrible famine in Bengal. So you can see this weekly market. It is also known as Hearts. Hearts at that time. The people used to come here to sell their products and to purchase. The need to improve agriculture. Now the British had the opportunity, or they had to do something to improve the agriculture so that they could increase the revenue system. If the economy was in ruins, could the company be certain of its revenue income? Most company officials began to feel that investment in land had to be encouraged and agriculture had to be improved. Right? How was this to be done? After 2 decades of debate on the question, the company finally introduced the permanent settlement in 1773. You have to remember, dear students, permanent settlement, it was the revenue system, it was land revenue system. It was started in 1773, permanent settlement. It was started by Charles Cornwallis. Charles Cornwallis was the Governor General of India when the permanent settlement was introduced. At that time, Governor General of Bengal, we can say, in India, Bengal. So Charles Cornwallis introduced this system. By the term of the settlement, Rajas and Talukdars were recognized as Jamindars. Means at that time the local Rajas and Talukdars, they had the land, they were declared as Jamindars. Okay, and they were asked to collect rent from the peasants and pay revenue to the company. The amount to be paid was fixed permanently, right? It was 1/11th. 1/11th of the revenue collected to themselves, while the British got a fixed share of 10/11. You have to remember, right? 10/11th. Okay, so of the revenue collected, the Jamindars were free to fix the rate. So you have to remember these two figures, datas, 1/11th and 10/11th. Now we'll study about, it was felt that this would ensure a regular flow of revenue into companies' coffers and at the same time encourage the zamindars to invest in improving the land, since the revenue demand of the state would not be increased. The zamindars would benefit from increased production from the land. But there were several problems in this system in the permanent settlement. What were the problems? The permanent settlement had some problems. Company officials soon discovered that zamindars were in fact not investing in the improvement of land. The revenue that had been fixed was so high and that the zamindars found it difficult to pay. Anyone who failed to pay revenue lost his zamindaris. Numerous zamindaris were sold off at auctions organized by the company. So by the first decade of the 19th century, the situation means we can say that 1810, so the first decade of 19th century. So the situation changed, the prices in the market rose and cultivation slowly expanded. This meant as increase in the income of the zamindaris but zamindars, but no gain for the company, since it could not increase the revenue demand that had been fixed permanently. Because it was fixed permanently, so the company did not have the opportunity to increase their revenue demand. Even then, the zamindars did not have an interest in improving the land. While some had lost their lands in the earlier years of the settlement, others now saw the possibility of earning without the trouble and risk of investment. As long as zamindars could give out the land to tenants means peasants and farmers, and they get rent, they were not interested in the improving the land. So in this way, we have studied about permanent settlement and the problems in the permanent settlement. So on the other hand, in the villages, the cultivators found the system extremely oppressive, right? The rent he paid to the zamindar was very high and his right on the land was insecure. To pay the rent, he had to often take a loan from the moneylender, and when he failed to pay the rent, he was evicted from the land he had cultivated for generations. So, this was the problem in the system in the permanent settlement. So, dear students, in the next video, we will study about the Mahalwadi system and the Ryotwadi system, and further in the chapter. So, till now, you have to revise this topic. Thank you. Have a nice day.